The question that is asked several times during this film is who watches the Watchmen? The group of heroes within this film try and keep society and humanity free from evil and wrongdoing. But is there anyone who keeps the Watchmen themselves in check? If these heroes resort to the same behavior as the common folk, can they still be considered Watchmen? Or are they now part of the problem that they saw themselves fit to take care of? But most importantly, what makes these heroes' sense of right and wrong superior to that of the society in general? And what are the philosophies that these heroes live by? We will be focusing mainly on two characters within this film, Rorschach, also known as Walter Kovacs, and Ozymandias, better known as Adrian Veidt. Rorschach, whom we can see as sort of the main character and narrator of the film, lives by a philosophy that comes close to that of deontology. Deontological thinking focuses on the ideals and means one has, the actions one takes. The ends this may result to are secondary and not the main focus. The morality of this philosophy lies in the idea that there is a set of rules and standards that one lives by, no matter what the results may be. Immanuel Kant subscribed to this philosophy, although other large parts of his moral philosophy, such as the categorical imperative, do not go hand in hand very well with Rorschach's behavior. This is mainly because the actions that Rorschach takes are very brutal and would result in a murderous rampage if everyone were to live by these standards. Rorschach believes that the best way to get rid of evil is to simply get rid of the people who are directly responsible for it. He does not get rid of evil to create a better world as a whole per se. The big picture and the long-term consequences of his actions are of no direct concern to him. Although most of Rorschach's behavior focuses on the means to get rid of the evil before him, he does have moments where he considers the bigger picture.
Soon there will be war. Millions will perish in sickness and misery. Why does one death matter against so many? Because there is good and evil must be punished, even in the face of Armageddon. I will not compromise in this.
Whereas deontology focuses on the means rather than the ends, the opposite can be said of utilitarianism. According to this school of philosophical thinking, the end always justifies the means. It is a form of moral philosophy that focuses much more on the long-term benefits of certain actions. The idealized ends, or utilities of certain behavior, can differ greatly. The end can be personal benefits, monetary means, or simply the needs of many. Adrian Veidt is the hero that quite closely follows the utilitarian model. This makes him and Rorschach somewhat polar opposites. Both Veidt and Rorschach murder people in order to get rid of what is in their eyes evil. The difference is that Rorschach punishes the people he deems guilty, whereas Veidt is willing to sacrifice many innocent people in order to create a foe enemy for the world, thus uniting them and stopping a seemingly imminent nuclear war.
Of course, my moral safeguards gave me pause as a necessary sacrifice. A few key regions around the globe. New York, Los Angeles, Moscow, Hong Kong, disintegrated in an instant. 15 million people killed by Dr. Manhattan himself. The world's punishment for flirting with World War III.
For Veidt, the benefits of this sacrifice outweigh the costs. One could say, the challenge in this philosophy lies in the idea that some of the decisions that have to be made in order to reach a certain goal can be very challenging and damaging to both the outside world and the self.
Sleep well, gentlemen. Our new peaceful world will be indebted to your great sacrifice.
Are there flaws in these respective philosophies and the way they are put in action by these protagonists? First of all, it can be said that Rorschach does not follow a deontological philosophy in a Kantian way, for he uses people as a means to an end rather than an end in themselves. Rorschach tends to see society in a very black and white, polarized way. People are either good or bad, and the bad must be punished. The mask he wears does not simply symbolize a Rorschach inkblot, which stands for subjective interpretation and reflection, but in Walter Kovacs' case, it also stands for not being able to see the gray area that exists between so-called good and evil. His black and white thinking is so rigorous that it eventually leads to his own death. And what about Adrian Veidt and his utilitarianism? In how far is his resetting and uniting of humanity justified? He has no guarantee that warfare, evil and corruption will not return to the world after war has been stopped. One could say that theoretically, mankind can be reset by killing a certain amount of innocent people whenever it is needed, and doing this over and over again. But in how far is this still in line with the philosophy of utilitarianism? Is peace among the people really an end in this respect? If evil keeps returning in society, would that not make it an inherent part of human nature and therefore pivotal to its very existence? Of course, this is all hypothetical, but it does tie directly into the idea of accomplishing ends through actions.
If the Russians do launch their nukes, can John really stop them?
The Soviets have 51,000 warheads stockpiled. Even if John stops 99% of it, the 1% to get through, he'll still kill every living thing on Earth.
An interesting difference between Rorschach and Veidt, besides their philosophies, is the scale on which both think. Rorschach focuses on and takes out one criminal at a time. This might do good on a small scale, and no matter how small the scale, it does put his ideals into action, and thus he is doing what according to him is right. But is he really getting rid of evil in the society at large? Veidt takes much more rigorous actions, and decides to change things on a more grand scale. He tries to change the world in its entireness, making his philosophy much more universal. This may make Veidt's actions seem more murderous or even immoral, but in the end he accomplishes his goals on a much larger scale than Rorschach.
Your schoolboy heroics are redundant. What have they achieved?
Theoretically, the ultimate consequences of Rorschach's actions would lead to the exact same situation Veidt is trying to create. The only difference here is that Rorschach is not willing to sacrifice innocent people, and his method is much more time-consuming. Is there anything we can learn from these two philosophies, their merits and their flaws? Let's take a moment and look back at the question of who watches the Watchmen. Holding on too tight to any system of beliefs can lead to destructive consequences, both for the individual holding these beliefs and for the world at large. But then again, this might be part of the philosophy one lives by and therefore justified in itself. Not taking any actions because the consequences simply cannot be known or because things cannot be separated in black and white will ultimately accomplish nothing. At the very least, it is admirable to form an own philosophy, take responsibility, and act upon one's own beliefs. And that is exactly what both Rorschach and Veidt are doing.